Hi, I did a lesson at Go Make Something this week on some silly altered bottles that I turned into Halloween potion bottles. And I thought I would do a video lesson on how I did the sponge painting. So let's talk about sponges first. These are sea sponges. In theory, these were at one time growing at the bottom of some ocean somewhere. You can find these in most craft stores in the painting section. If they have a section dedicated to faux finishing, you'll probably find a little bag of them there in this size. They're also available at home decorating centers if they have paints and supplies for faux finishing, and you'll find them in this jumbo size for that. This is more the size that I would use to do a wall. This little one is the one that I've been using for artwork and altered projects for about 10 years now, so don't be put off by the price of sea sponges. They are a little expensive, but like I said, 10 years with this same sponge, and you can see it's a little stained and it has one hard spot on the bottom right here. But I like this little sponge because it has a lot of different textures on it, so I have a lot of different options in my hand with just one wet sponge. So I'm starting with a blank palette, which for me is just a foam or paper plate, and I'm going to be using my usual cheap acrylic paints. And this technique doesn't really take a lot of paint. You don't need very much, so I'm just going to drool a tiny little bit of each color that I want to use for the sponging. And then I'm going to draw it out a little. This is sort of similar to what printmakers do on glass or on a setup surface. Just sort of drag the color out so that you're not sticking your sponge into a big wet blob. And then I'm going to take some water and submerge the sponge in it. And sea sponges are really absorbent, so pretty quickly you'll feel the sponge get very, very soft, and it really sucks up a lot of water. So this is a very wet sponge, and I'm going to just wring the heck out of it, squeeze it really hard to get all the extra water out. So now I have this nice, soft, flexible sponge. And I'm going to put the water far away. I try to keep water and other liquids off my work table whenever possible because I make a big fat mess out of liquids. Okay, so now we're going to do a little sponging, and what I'm going to do is just dab the sponge into the paint. And there's not a whole lot of paint on there, it's just a tiny little bit. And then I'm going to start tapping it onto the bottle. Now this is a really subtle bit of sponging. There's not a lot of contrasty color here, but it is knocking down the orange quite a bit. I base coated this bottle with just the same flat orange that I use in the sponging, and the reason that I'm adding that same color along with the brown is to get a little blending going. So if I want a little bit more contrast, I can add a darker color, or 2 or 3 darker colors if I want to. You can really use as many different colors of paint for this technique as you want. I've done whole walls this way with very large sponges, obviously, and used, oh gosh, 5 or 6 different colors. There we go. Let's see if I get a better effect with this. So again, not a whole lot of paint on here. Oh, there, I bet you can see that on the camera now, can't you? So, and I'm not tapping very hard. And notice how I'm also not grabbing a whole lot of extra paint. Once the paint is on the sponge, a
little bit goes a really long way. And you can just keep sponging and keep blending, and you can set this aside to dry and apply another set of colors. Sometimes I'll do a base coat and a medium tone, and then sponge on some dark, and then sponge on some light after the dark has dried. And this is just gonna take the edge off of the really violent orange that I base coated the bottle with and make it look a little old and funky, which is just the effect I need for these very silly potion bottles. Now, I use sea sponges for this, and I recommend them because they have such a great natural uneven texture. I've seen people try this with cellulose sponges or the sponges that you use in the kitchen, and they are very regular and very even, and they have a really hard edge to them, so even when they're torn into pieces, they always look really unnatural. Alright, I think that is quite enough sponging on this bottle. I can just set this aside, and probably in about 15 or 20 minutes it will be dry and ready to take the next step. It's time to rinse the sponge out, and I would actually usually take this into the sink and rinse it out there so that I don't foul my clean water on my work table. But that's all the cleaning that the sponge needs, and it's ready for another set of colors.
Okay, that was my quick and easy sponge painting lesson. I hope it helps. The finished project instructions are available at gomakesomething.com. You do have to be a registered member to view finished project instructions. See you next time.